Hi, I'm Katie Longhurst. I am the founder of Ask Joan, a chief technical officer, but most importantly, I am a mum to an 11-year-old boy.
So we are here today because you want to tell us all about your experience, but also how that experience has built up to what you're doing today.
So Ask Joan, firstly, is named after my nan. So I'm a survivor of domestic abuse, and Joan was the only person that actually believed me. And it was founded from lived experience. My ex-perpetrator, I could understand his pattern of behaviour. So when I sensed tension, I used to say to him, let's sit down, let's talk about this, I'm going to make you a cup of tea. My background is solely IT engineering, smart buildings, tech, energy. And I went to work and I used to say to them, I wish there was something on the kettle. I wish I could call for help from my kettle. Smart energy is publicly available now. So I had the opportunity to create Joan, which enables a victim, survivor, escapist to call for help from any household appliance in their home by simply doing a toggle pattern. No app, no hardware, just a normal household appliance. I was a high-risk domestic abuse victim, so I had a red alert on my home, which meant if I dialed 999 and I couldn't actually speak, they would send a blue light response to me immediately. I had a panic alarm in my home. On most occasions, I was depending on my neighbours hearing commotion actually calling the police on my behalf, because on several times, on 3 separate instances when I went to activate my panic alarms were on a 30-day recall cycle by the police. They hadn't renewed my panic alarm.
And is that, so when you say panic alarm, I get this image in my head of like a cartoony big red button that says help. What was that like in your home?
So the panic alarms come with a big blue box that you'll try to hide, but it's a significant size. Then I had a panic alarm that was hardwired to a big red button, like in your cartoon reference, that was behind my bed. And then I had one that was the size of a remote control that you could take around the house and activate. But when there was tension and hostility in the home, you were physically unable to activate that panic alarm because that would have increased your danger. So Joan is based on smart energy data. So how it works is we've developed multiple data models. I say multiple, thousands of data models to understand household appliances signatures within the home. We've coupled that with artificial intelligence, so we can enable an escapist to activate a panic alarm without raising a word, pressing the big red button or call the police. How it works is you simply turn a household appliance on and off in a particular pattern, and our data models will detect that unusual surge in electricity and automatically send a text message, a push notification or call to your emergency contacts.
So the pattern, the on-off pattern, is that something that you can do accidentally, or how's that work?
So no, the pattern you wouldn't be able to do accidentally. So we spent the last 12 months designing different data models for energy consumptions, because originally when we first built Joan, I was convinced that I had a ghost because my tumble dryer had the same surges of on-off as the pattern that we created. So every time my washing went from washing to tumble, I would get a Ask Joan notification. So we've had to study and look at different appliances uses and consumptions so we can determine a pattern that is an unusual energy surge compared to your normal activity within your property. So what we do is when we put a user live with Ask Joan, unless they request, we don't put the emergency contacts on for the first 48 hours because we want to understand their energy consumptions and usage within their home so we can ensure that pattern is effective.
So you get like a baseline, you get an understanding, and then anything that therefore deviates after that is an alert.
Yeah. I understand technology and the ambition that I wanted to achieve, and that has helped me on my journey. And obviously I've got a fantastic team of developers that sit around me to bring my ideas completely to reality. But it was born obviously from experience that I have throughout my career, because I worked for a big FM energy company at an exec level for about 5 years. So I got to understand how energy data and smart buildings worked.
So if you couldn't do this, then no one else could, really. So in terms of the position you're in at the moment, like who are you working with? How is Ask Joan being used at the moment?
Yes, so we have 250 live users for Ask Joan. I created Ask Joan in summer of last year because I decided that I was actually being open about my journey of domestic abuse, because my story is quite relatable because he did every single form of DA with me. I originally reached out to local councillors and local authorities, explained that I was an escapist of domestic abuse and that I had created this product called Joan and I wanted to take it to market. But before I did any of that, I was with a freedom program. So, freedom program, you were put in and you were the same group of people for 6 weeks where you learn changing behaviour, recognising signs of abuse. So, we stayed together for the last 15 years. We've worked together. We still meet once a week as like a support group where we have tea and coffee, not necessarily to talk about experiences because some of us are still in those relationships. Some of us have left that part of our life behind and we're all in different places. But as a group of people, when domestic abuse wasn't widely recognised in 2010, we stayed together because we understood what each other was going through. So I took the idea to them and they thought I was crazy. They was just like, how can you activate it from your kettle? And then I asked them all to trial it and test it, which helped us build and train our data models through lived experience. There was 50 users. Since then, I partnered with Bradford Local Authority, where we're not just using it for domestic abuse survivors, we're actually using it for vulnerable adults. So we work with a charity called Evolve, where they have 20 properties where each is occupied by 2 women who have got from different walks of life, whether it's domestic abuse, whether it's drug addiction, whether they're just vulnerable adults. So we're working closely with Bradford. We've also just launched a new pilot with Bradford Local Authority called Ask Joe, solely focused for male victims of domestic abuse, because obviously there's more of a stigma around men than women raising concerns about DA. And we work closely with Oasis Domestic Abuse Charity in Kent. They were the ones that helped save my life. And Brecon Local Authority were one of our early adopters.
So it's being used, it's saving lives already?
Yeah, so a lady at Brecon Local Authority taught her 5-year-old daughter that she could call her aunties from the kettle. So she said to her, Mummy doesn't wake up, you can call your aunties by simply turning the kettle on and off. And her partner was released last November when they had the 30-day recalls and actually come to the property, and her 5-year-old daughter was able to call for help for her mum.
Wow, that's amazing. That must have quite a profound effect on you knowing that.
It was the reason I did it. As my relationship deteriorated, I became pregnant. I've got a little human, and I wanted to find a way that he could help protect both of us. So he didn't have to access the phone. He didn't have to press a panic alarm. He knew that he could just activate it from any device. Now he's 11. He understands a bit more about what we went through and what is needed. But if he was like 4 or 5, I could have just said to him, if Mummy needs help, go and turn the kettle on and off.
You rely on the phones. No one's got a home phone really anymore. A home phone, I don't even know what that is. But, that landline doesn't really exist for most homes. Mobiles are, locked down with thumbprints. So for, a young child to actually call for help, it's virtually impossible, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think if you're in a highly controlled situation, so for me, when things escalated out of control, my son was 18 months old. So I used to pick him up from the childminder. He had an iPad to watch Peppa Pig on. Then, as soon as I got through the door, my ex-partner would take my laptop, take my son's iPad, take my work tablet, and take my phone.
Was that like literally every time you got home?
It was because he wanted to control the narrative and control the environment in the home. He wanted me to know that I was isolated without physically saying, I'm isolating you from the world.
If you'd have known that you had that safety net, what difference would that have made to you then?
So I had poor experience with the police where DA wasn't highly recognised, didn't understand gaslighting, coercive control, stalking and harassment. Everything was, oh, it's a domestic, you're in a relationship. So to have Joan at that time would have given me like a reassurance, that safety net that I knew that I can go to my kitchen and I can continue my normal routine to try and manage that situation by saying, let's sit down, let's talk about it, let you tell me what I've done wrong and how I can manage that situation, manage your expectations and try and change. And I would have gone and made him a cup of tea. He wouldn't have noticed because that's what my pattern was when his behaviour would escalate. I'd have gone and made him a cup of tea. I would have turned it on and off in a particular pattern. And then a push notification would have been sent. At that point, I would have had it to my next door neighbours, who was also my friend, and she would have called the police. or she would have popped round and asked for sugar or something random because he was like Jekyll and Hyde. So Prince Charming in public, controlling behind doors. If she had knocked on the door and said, "Oh, just popping in, have you got any sugar I can borrow?" which seems really simple, that would have mitigated that situation. Or if she had heard loud noises or shouting, she would have called the police for me.
So your support group were the first ones to actually start using it. And now it's hit about 250 live users. Where does it need to go next for you?
For me, it needs to be adopted by local authorities or the police force. I think if you talk to survivors, majority of survivors will refuse to have a panic alarm installed in their home if they're still living with their perpetrator, because that adds risk to them. So I think it should be included within safety planning. When you're with a local authority under, for example, MARAC, they discuss your safety plan and they work with you to put a safety plan in place, whether it's a Ring doorbell, whether it's a panic alarm, whether it's a high risk alert on your home. And it would be really good to have Joan included within those safety plans. So that alert goes to the police if you're a high risk victim, or if not, the local authority can manage your risk if you're low or medium risk, but you know you've got that safety net there, that there's nothing that you're going to raise hostility in your home by pressing the big red button or picking up your phone. So how it's worked with the local authorities that are currently live, they bought a bulk amount of licenses that they rotate to victims. So the aim is to get the person out of that situation. So you may have Joan for 3 months and then you alternate that license, which is how it's working at the moment, that they provide that safety net for survivors and they know that it's got an option. And because we've done it quite low cost, it should be accessible for all.
The difficulties around how much people know about it and its visibility, for us to actually get the word out there in a way that people understand that they can use it. It's there. It's going to help save them without it becoming too well known. How do you balance that?
I think that's the biggest problem that we faced. So we've partnered with charities. So Oasis Domestic Abuse Service in Kent have been absolutely phenomenal and a great support to us and me throughout my journey. And we've done it by contacting local authorities directly. They're not actually recognising what we're offering them. So we are getting some traction, but not the traction that we thought we would get, considering how many DA survivors and victims there are. And when we're posting on social media, we can't say what we're doing because you don't want the perpetrator to understand and start looking for someone turning on a kettle in a particular pattern, because that then can increase the risk and destroys the whole covert way that we've built Joan. And for me, yes, I have done press interviews, but that's increased my risk. So when I'd done recent press interviews where my perpetrator was free, that escalated and I had nails put in my tyres, my car windows smashed. I had death threats from multiple different social media accounts. So I don't have social media publicly available, but I have social media for obviously Joan. And that just got swamped with over 100 death threats because I've spoken and that I was tarnishing his name. So it's managing that risk, because all I care about really is protecting others, but at the heart of it, I need to protect my son. Originally, Joe was a mobile app that sat on the phone, although it was in stealth mode. And I knew that wouldn't work because I had a tracker on my car, my house was bugged, and I had spyware on my phone. But I wanted to try and build and scale something. So the original feedback was, we can't have a mobile app on our phone, even if it's in stealth mode as a lifestyle app. So then we removed the mobile app and everything is now in the cloud. Then there was, because we're not an energy GCC, there was issues around validating that you are the right person at that address. So there was a problem with the onboarding process because you had to validate that it's you, energy account holder. So we had to look at that validation, but we partnered with a company called Chameleon Technologies, who are actually an energy GCC. And we've reviewed all of the SEC, which are the energy guidance, to see how we can protect the vulnerable and remove that onboarding process. And we've now managed to simplify the onboarding process, because I know in my circumstance, again, Joan wouldn't have been accessible for me. Because although everything, like the house, was in my name, he slowly but surely removed all of the bills out of my name into his name. And he then took charge of all of my finances because he was planning for our future. He was looking after me. So I wouldn't have been in the position to validate that I lived at that address because I had nothing in my name. And then when my case escalated and I was moved to Northern Ireland under Paladin, I was given a pseudo identity. So again, there was nothing tying me to who I was at my property. But now we've obviously challenged the SEC processes. We've reviewed all of the guidance, all 156 pages of it, and pushed back and said, look, there has to be something that you can do, because how are you protecting vulnerable adults and children if you're asking them to identify themselves? So we've now simplified that onboarding process. So everything that was thrown as a challenge, we've now thankfully mitigated. All of our staff from Ask Joan are survivors of domestic abuse. One of our staff members was an IFA and ex-police, so his passion was supporting victims and survivors of domestic abuse. And I actually poached him from one of our pilot sites because he was so wonderful about helping us design the onboarding process, putting the safety plans. And I knew that victims and survivors would call us for advice and support, and I wanted to ensure that we had DA specialists that could actually support them, because I've got lived experience. I don't understand safety planning and all the protocols that are involved to help protect someone in that situation. I know what I went through and what would have kept me safe, but all of the other staff are from lived experience. Either they've experienced domestic abuse firsthand with a perpetrator, or they've grown up in an environment that has been abusive.
And how important is that to you in terms of building your team as you grow?
I wanted to give survivors a second chance, because I think when you've been through an extremely controlling and abusive relationship, you lose your self-worth, you lose confidence in your abilities, and going back into the big wide world of work is absolutely terrifying. So I needed it to be a safe environment, and people can use their lived experience to help others and also help heal.
How useful is it, do you think, that you've come from that place of lived experience? Do people really understand and appreciate that when they speak to you?
Yeah, I think the big thing is there's so much in the press about tech abuse, and obviously I was subjected heavily for tech abuse, and they appreciate that I built it out of my own experience, where I've learned the hard way. I'm very open about my journey, and they can recognize the failings and they can use it as lessons learned for improvement. Before I built Joan, I did intensive market research around smart buildings, smart energy data. I reached out to multiple energy companies, but no one is doing what we're doing. And to me, that's completely and utterly insane. Because why has no one thought about doing what we're currently doing? But no, there's nothing out there like it. People still have other applications that are stored on their phone, or the traditional panic alarm, or a high risk alert on their home.
Mm. And the fact that it's been built by somebody who has such an understanding of the situation makes it incredibly unique as well.
Yeah, I think because it's been built out of lived experience and there's so much in the press around tech abuse, this is actually tech for good.